G'day there, you're watching the Aussie BIM Guru, and today I've got quite an exciting video to share with you. So I'm going to show you a program today called Twinmotion, and I'm just going to give a crash course in how to use it. So Twinmotion, so for those that aren't aware, it's basically a software that uses the Unreal Engine. It competes in the same marketplace as some of these programs, particularly Lumion and Enscape and the Unreal and Unity engines, essentially to do visualization of your design. So it's a visualization tool aimed towards architecture typically, but also a gaming design tool in some regard as well, when it's in the context of the Unreal Engine. It can handle things like Revit, SketchUp, ArchiCAD, and generally just any FBX format files, so it's very flexible. It's really important that the reason I'm sharing this quite early compared to when I planned to is it's free until November 2019, so definitely get your hands on it and try it out. They've basically made a modified version available on the Epic Games platform, which according to their release on press is that it's always going to be free, this version. I'm skeptical, but I'll wait and see what happens in November, and I'll enjoy it for free in the meantime. So to access Twinmotion, you'll essentially just visit this website here. So you can Google Twinmotion and it should be the first thing that comes up. And you'll be prompted to download and install the Epic Games portal. So essentially the equivalent to Steam by Epic. So in this course, I'm going to cover some workflows. So how you can live link between Revit and this program, and also how you can export straight out from Revit using a plugin. And then also how you can convert objects and collapse your browser tree. And from there, we're going to move on, look at the user interface, how to navigate the program and set up views, and also how to clip with section planes as well. From there, we'll look at materials and objects, and also RPCs, so people and trees, how you can animate them and set up animation paths. And then we'll touch on the environment, so the time of day settings and weather, and then just look at some basic image capturing and walkthrough settings. So quite a lot to cover, so this might be a little bit of a long video, but I think it'll be really valuable to share with the channel. So basically on the same website, if you follow this link, you'll be able to find a few plugins that you can install for any of these programs. So ArchiCAD, Revit, SketchUp, and RicCAD. So I'd never heard of RicCAD before. Apparently it's very popular in Japan for landscape design. It looks like it might be popular in China as well. That sort of makes sense as to why maybe Epic Games is supporting it, because I guess Epic Games has a lot of Chinese investors behind the scenes. So I think it might be Chinese managed or owned as well. So maybe that's why RicCAD's in here. So there you go, new program. So without further ado, let's just get started. So essentially I'm going to be using a model that I've set up from my university days. So this is the website here, but I've downloaded the Epic Games browser, created an account and installed the software. And then I've installed the plugin. So essentially I've just got a little model here. And I've also got just a site context around it as a generic model, which is an imported CAD file. So it's important to note that I have put a bit of effort into setting up materials in my scene. You should probably also put some effort into setting up your materials. If not, just use the basic sample project in Revit. It's probably suitable for this task as well. So you'll note that pretty much everything will have materials assigned. So for example, this concrete wall has a concrete that I've created specifically for this task. It's also important that you use common materials between elements that you want to change the material for quite easily. So rather than making every single wall its own special material, make sure you use common materials where it makes sense. But anyway, let's create a export out to Twinmotion. So to do that, you just go to export in this little plugin on your tab. So this is the plugin that I've installed. You can choose what to export, so either what you select or what's visible. Typically, I don't export textures. I don't really see a point. The only reason you'd export textures is if you're doing a dynamic experience between Twinmotion and Revit, because you actually can keep exporting out to Twinmotion and updating the model. In this case, I'm not going to, because I'm going to actually be running Twinmotion on my own computer rather than run my remote desktop session. There's an option called collapse. So this basically lets you condense your entire export into layers based on certain criteria. So for example, you can collapse things based on whether they're a family or a material. So if you did material, everything that's concrete would just become one object in Twinmotion. We don't want to do that, nor family, so we're going to say none. You could do family, but I usually just prefer to say none, because you want all your walls to be individual instances, just in case you want to overwrite the material on a one-off basis, I would say. I usually just use Revit standard mesh. I believe optimize will oversimplify some elements, but maybe it gives you a lighter export. Typically I tick off export vegetation, so this will exclude anything on the planting category from what I understand. which is really good because that'll also exclude RPC elements for Enscape as well. So if you use both programs, it really suits the categorization of those elements in Enscape as well. Typically, I'll exclude MEP families, so I assume that this takes categories like pipes, conduits, things that associate themselves to MEP and doesn't export them. But I'll just won't export them even though I don't think there's any in here anyway. And you can include things in linked files as well. But note that you can't include things like nested CAD links. If you want to export a CAD element out as well, I recommend you import it into a family and then place the family in the project, and then it will find that geometry. This option is quite interesting. So if all dimensions of an object are smaller than the number you provide here, say 20 millimeters, it won't export the elements. So this is a good way to not export, say, nuts and bolts in a structural framing model. I'm going to export everything because I know my model and I trust it. So all you have to do now is export, and it exports it as an FBX, which is optimized for use in Twinmotion. So we'll just save that out. And it's quite a small file. This is quite surprising how small the export is. This model is about 40 megabytes, and the export is about a quarter of that size. So really impressive. But anyway, let's jump into Twinmotion instead. So I've actually basically loaded this export across to my computer. So once you're in Twinmotion, you might get a window asking you how you want to navigate the model. So select your navigation options before you start, but eventually you'll just end up in this window here. So you're actually looking at a scene, you just don't realize it. There's actually a ground plane underneath you and a horizon in the distance. What we want to do first is import our model. So we'll just go to import and we'll find that FBX file. So if you go open, make sure you go to options first, because by default it collapses by material. We don't want to do that, and I'll show you why. So I'm going to collapse by material first, then I'm going to start again. So this is essentially our model. So you can navigate using the right mouse button for orbit by holding it down. You can pan by holding your middle mouse button, and you can use WASD or the arrow keys to navigate around your scene. Like Enscape, you can hold shift to go faster. So that will give you like a little bit of a speed boost. But essentially, we're looking at our model at the moment. So it looks pretty good already. Like, it's very flat, obviously, but all the geometries come across really well. So if you go over here to this little arrow and expand it, we get our scene browser or our scene graph. So if I export this, note that everything's sorted by layer. So if I select, say, my concrete, I'll just find that in the list. Actually, let's just pick my massing. You'll see that it's picked everything. There's no way to just select one particular shape out of my site mass. So that's because it's all been collapsed by material. We don't want that. We want everything to be its own object. So we're going to go new scene, and we'll import again. And instead, we will set the hierarchy to keep hierarchy. You can fix the UVs on elements, and that will make some assumptions about the UV mapping. I typically just let it be as it is. Usually I leave Z as my up axis, and then conversion I just set to auto. So we'll import in this time, and we'll note that our browser is going to look a little bit different. So now it's actually sorted everything by object instead, so not by material. So now if I select this box, you'll see that I actually get the whole element, which is great. So it's much more efficient than how it was set up before. Some elements are still grouped, so like for example this CAD export is all one, but if I select say this fascia, the fascia is just its own element. One really cool thing about Twinmotion versus Enscape is that as soon as you select something, you can actually move it, transform it, and scale it. That's something that you can't do in a lot of rendering software. Typically you just work between, say, Revit and the software itself. So that's already a really exciting feature. It's also a modeling tool. I always recommend the first thing you do before you start doing anything is do a save as. And we'll just do demo day, because I've got a night demo that I'll show at the end. Anyway, let's just look at the user interface a little bit more. So we've got our scene browser over here. If I minimize this, there's a little eye up here. And we'll go through these controls in a second. But essentially it has a day-night slider, some view settings, and then some walkthrough settings. So we'll get there soon. The other element we have here is our library. So essentially this will contain a whole bunch of elements, materials, RPCs, lighting, vehicles, volumes, and your own custom library. So we'll get to that as well, because that's very advanced. We've got a little preferences and settings ribbon here. The one that really matters, I find, is preferences. And the really important thing is to choose your fidelity or your detail level. I'm going to go down to medium just to go a bit faster. And I'm going to go OK on that. And then you'll see everything looks a little bit worse, but immediately everything is much smoother and faster to navigate. So we'll turn our quality back up a little bit later. And down here is essentially, I guess, our environment or our scene controls. And we'll look at those second. But we're going to just start up here and look at just setting up some views. So if we open up this little element here, the first thing we'll do is just check our view cube. So we have a whole bunch of views available. I can go to the bottom of my model, to the top, to the sides, and then just back to 3D. So that's really, really cool to know that's available. Whilst I'm in top view, a really handy setting is the clipping plane. So if I click on this, I'll get a little, okay, I've got to stay hovering over it. So all the selections in Twinmotion are quite interesting. So they basically just are controlled with a line that you just click and hold and drag. And you'll see eventually as I go down, I'm sectioning through my model. So you can see now I'm in my roof, say in this room over here. And as I section down, I actually can see inside this bedroom. Currently I'm above the ceiling, but if I just go a little bit more, now I'm actually in the room. That can be really handy when you're trying to place furniture, for example, because it can be very hard to do that from inside the room itself. Possible, but hard. So note as well that you can either drag the slider or you can click on this and actually type in an explicit value. And that will go for pretty much anything in the program that works this way, which is really handy. I didn't realize that at first, and I was trying to click and drag these sliders for quite a while, which was quite tricky. Okay, so we'll just go back to 3D. And notice how easy the interface is to navigate. It's very friendly. I learned this program in about 2 hours. I mean, I learned fast, but still, even for me, that's very quick. So I was very impressed by how intuitive all of this was to pick up. You can change your speed as well. So currently we're actually moving at bicycle speed. I can go to walk speed instead, and note that now I'm moving at a much more brisk, less brisk pace. We'll go back to bike speed because I find that's usually a good speed to get around for modeling. Okay, so probably now we're going to look at materials. So note that all my materials are really flat. So this is meant to be a concrete, for example, like an Ando style concrete. So let's go to our materials browser and have a look at it. So if I click on this, you note that everything's broken down by category, and there's a lot of categories, and each of these has a lot of materials. And these all come with Twinmotion. You don't have to do any installation, no downloadable content or like loot boxes. It's all here. So really exciting. And you get little thumbnail displays of the materials, and you'll notice straight away they're good looking materials. They're not too big, but not too small. They look very nice for a medium quality walkthrough experience. So I'm looking for like an Ando sort of concrete. So I reckon I'll use something like this poured concrete finish. So I'm just going to click and drag, and note that everything is updating that matches that type of material. So that's because I'm setting myself to something called replace material. So it's just here, this setting, and essentially it finds everything in the scene that contains that material, and then it replaces it with something else. Note that it's not looking for the thing with that Revit material, because the Revit materials have already been converted into Twinmotion materials with their particular name. So as soon as I replace this with another material, it will join the same group as anything else that matches it, if that makes sense. You've got some UV mapping controls here as well, so spherical, UV, cylindrical, and cubic. Sometimes if you don't have a good UV map, I find a box UV can be quite good, because it essentially sets up a regular grid across the face of your elements you're mapping to. So in this case, I will go to a cubic UV. As well as that, you've got translation as well, so you can scale, rotate, and move textures once you've placed them. Quite interesting. But what we're going to do here is just show the apply to object setting. So this one will only apply to one element that you place it on. So see how it's not doing all the concrete anymore, it's just doing one face. So really important to understand that difference. So we'll just go back to replace material, because what you can do once you've placed this material is now you get a context sensitive window that comes up and gives you a whole bunch of options. So you can see here like this mapping is not quite working. So what I can do is actually change my scale. And note that it changes everywhere, so you may have to do things object by object to get the UV that you desire. In my case, I'm just going to go to a scale of 1.5. Yeah, 1.5 looks about right. You can also change a lot of other things too. You can up the reflection of the material. Typically I find the reflections are pretty good. You can change the color of it too and give it a tint. Some materials are worth tinting, others aren't, and you can tell it whether it responds to weather effects or not. So for example, does it get wet in the rain? So I'll get to weather later on. Weather's really cool, something most other programs don't have. So in this case I will say it gets wet in the rain. There's some other settings as well, like how metallic is it, how bumpy is it, what sound does it make when you walk on it. So really cool. Two-sided as well, so if you have a planar element that has no 3D depth, you can tell it to have a material on both sides of that face. Typically you won't need to say on unless it's a purely flat sheet, which is pretty rare in a 3D model. So let's just replace a few other materials. So let's look for some metal. This is meant to be like a corrugated sort of aluminium finish, or like a VM zinc. So let's see what they've got. You can also search. I'll search for zinc. So they don't have any zinc or corrugated. I think they've got aluminium. Yeah, there we go. So we've got like an aluminium siding. So we'll use one of these. Maybe this one here. It's got a nice little rib on it. There we go. And this one, I don't like the orientation of it. I want to rotate it to a vertical orientation. So what we'll do is we'll look for the rotation settings. And where are they? They're actually under more. So a lot of menus have more under them. So if I go to more, here's my rotation. And I can translate it as well. So really cool. So I can just rotate this by 90. Cool. As well as that, it's not very reflective, or it sort of is. But I want to tint it a bit more. So I'm going to go back. So I'm going to just add a little bit of darkness to it. It's a little bit too light at the moment. And I might just add just a little bit more reflection. And note that if you make changes here, they're not being made everywhere. It's only to this instance of the time that you place the material. So the next time I place this material, it won't be like this. It will be back to the way it was originally. So see, it's not the same material the next time you place it. So every material is really easy to just make little tweaks to when you place it. Let's just make a steel fascia as well. So we'll just get a... I don't really like the galvanized finish. I might just double check if there's another sort of softer metal. I won't spend too long with materials because I could do this for a very long time, which wouldn't make for a very interesting video. So I'll just use a carbon steel finish because I don't really have to tweak that, which is nice. Likewise, I'll just put it on my gutters and downpipes, and I'll just put on a roof finish because I want some materials so that when I do my scene, it's going to look pretty nice. So we'll go to our roof coverings. So we have a lot of different roof coverings. I might just do like a ColorBond steel. And again, in this case, I don't like the rotation on one of these. So in this case, the rotation is fine up here, but it's not down here. I might just leave this finish as it comes. But what I'm going to do is just switch to apply to object, apply again, but then rotate this particular instance of placement. And likewise, it looks like it's only done one of the two faces. There we go. So now you can see that's how I've achieved the same material on two elements with different UVs. So really easy. Another really important material to swap out is your glass, because the glass needs to be a good quality. I think a clear glass is usually okay. If you want to have a more architectural look, I find reflective glass is sometimes better, depending on your scene. But other than that, we'll just go in and put a floor down here, because we're going to do a little walk through this courtyard. And we're going to place a tree in the middle of it as well. But we'll do that next. So I'm just going to put some stone finish in here, and I don't know quite what stone. I might just do a blank slate finish with just a little bit of a tint. So we'll go down to about 110. And I'm just going to put that on my stairs as well, because my stairs have a different material on them in Revit. Again, I'll just go down to about 110. I'm being a little bit rough, that's all right. And let's just do a little hob brick wall here. So again, remember, we want to make sure that we're on apply to object. Because we only want to do these two little walls. Let's just do a little broken stone finish. Cool. All right, so the last thing that I'll put a material on is just a little bit of sight, and we'll just add some grass to the middle of this as well. So there's some nature materials in here, but there's also grass as well, which I'll go through shortly. But let's just for now put grass here, and we'll put some grass out here. And I might just switch to replace material and just make sure I'm going to replace all my grass, and then I'll just do some road materials. So sorry, underground, man-made. We've got an asphalt for road, and then we'll just have a concrete road, which I'll just switch to object for my curb. And then for my footpath, I'll just get like a cobblestone. I'll get like an old school sort of finish, probably. Cool. So I'll just switch back to replace material. I don't really like that footpath. It's a bit of an awkward looking footpath. I find the previews really helpful for sort of seeing what you're about to replace. What I might do is just search for path. So note when you search, that's actually probably good I did this. It's only searching in the current folder you're in, so you may need to go back a level or two in order to look for things. I might just look under brick instead, I think. You know what, let's just do a brick path, that's fine. Cool, there we go, that'll do. It's not perfect, but it'll do. Alright, so that's sort of materials covered. What we need to do now is look at how to place objects. So we're just going to start by placing a tree, because it's a very basic object to manage. So I'm going to put a tree in the middle of this planter. So if I go to vegetation and landscape, trees, we get little thumbnails of everything and a rough scale by a person sitting next to it. So pretty obvious what we're dealing with already. There's so many to pick from. The RPC library in this program is immense. It's amazing just how much comes out of the box in this program, whereas a lot of other programs like this leave a lot to be desired out of the box. Let's just put in a green ash tree. So you click once, and immediately I'm going to place it. And it's really easy to place the element. It always places on surface, so you can see that it's changing height as it finds a surface to host on. I'm just going to click in the middle here. And again, RPCs have some context-sensitive settings. So you notice as soon as I select it, it goes yellow. And I can change things like the scale really easily. I can also rotate and transform the element by picking the gizmo here, which is really cool. As well as that, I can tell the tree whether it changes with the season, or I can set the season manually. So I can say it's always winter, or it changes with the season. I can also tell it to not be affected by wind. So I can actually increase my wind speed as well, which I'll show. So it's some absolutely incredible settings for a program like this, and so much control and customization available to the user. So really exciting in my opinion. Everything I see in this program just keeps blowing me away, if you can't tell already. So pretty cool. Okay, so what we'll do now is we'll probably just look at some basic proxy workflows, because sometimes you might have elements in Revit that you don't like, such as a chair or a table, which isn't what you're looking to have. Let's say in my kitchen here, I've got a little kitchen counter modeled in place. Let's say we want to replace this with, let's say, a chair, for example. So obviously not a logical replacement, but let's say that's what we want to do. So immediately it finds it in the browser. If you right click, and you can zoom to selection to go to the element if you can't see where it is. But also you can activate replace object mode. And what it lets you do is it lets you go pick something else from your browser. So let's look for a table, for example, and just say we want to replace it with this progressive dining table. So you drop it there. You can set up a couple of transforms you want to make to the object before you replace it. And then while you've got it selected, just click Start Replace. And it's somewhere around here probably. I don't know quite where the tables went. It's probably down here, so it hasn't transformed quite right. But essentially that's replaced the object with that proxy. Depending on the object, it can work better sometimes versus others. So say here, I think this chair should be isolatable. I'll just double check, yep. So if I pick this chair, for example, and just move it outside the unit, and then I'll just move it over. So let's say we want to replace this chair with another type of chair. I'll just look for chair, get another type of chair, and start replace. And see in this case, it looks like it keeps, there we go. It kept the selection from before. So you can see how easy it is to swap objects out to other objects. And if I have multiple instances of these elements, say these ones here, I can go start replace, and you can see it's already just went and swapped all those objects. Obviously a lot of objects to swap, which is quite awkward. It's also showing another tool in the program, which is the ability to nest items within items. This is quite complicated, so I won't go too far into it, but you can put items inside items and treat them as a group. So you can see here if I move this element, it's moving the orchids and the table. That's because this element is nested within the overall table unit. So if I select the orchids on their own, I can move them independently, and then I can just go back and move them together. Or I can click and drag this up to break it out of the object. So now you can see if I move this around, it's not connected anymore. So that can be really helpful for building assemblies of elements and putting them together. But I won't go too far into that because that's quite complicated. Have a play with it though. Anyway, so I guess that's probably just the basics of how to work with elements. It's important to note that you can actually model what are called primitives in here as well. So I can go into furniture, primitives, and I can actually still model basic elements. So I can model boxes and scale them, and I can model planes, cylinders. So there is still the ability to natively create elements in the software, which is really important to understand because obviously sometimes you may need to model something on the fly. And you can use all these primitives to do that. So really helpful to know. And you've got like all your basic modeling primitives, so toruses, spheres, cubes, chamfered boxes. So there's a lot of control available in these already as elements. So really handy to know that that's an option as well. So I was really impressed by the fact that you can natively model, because most other tools like this you can't. Anyway, so let's move on. So you've also got decals as well. So these are just things you can place on surfaces. For example, a zebra crossing can just go on your road. So really impressive that there's a lot of little surface applications available out of the box as well. You have line markings as well, so you can actually add line markings to your road. So good to know that you've got the ability to sort of add a little bit of detail to your scene that looks a little bit nicer than a road without anything on it. So pretty impressive. You've got double line marking, so all sorts of tools you can play with. But I won't go too into depth on those. They're not just line markings too. There's a lot of other things like parking symbols, manhole covers. So there's a lot of drainage slots. So really interesting amount of things that you can place in your scene to sort of give it a bit more detail and a bit more believability in the overall big picture of things. Let's put a manhole there, for example. And this will make your scene look better when you go to render it as well, because there'll be more on it, and it will look more alive. It will look like something's actually happening. So let's let's put some graffiti on the wall. Someone's come and defaced my design, unfortunately, before it even had a chance to really get going. You can see how easy it is to place, and you can obviously modify it as well real easily by selecting it. You can change the opacity. You can do all sorts of things to it. So yeah, really handy to know. Okay, so beyond that, we're going to look at RPCs now. So this is where it gets a bit more fun. So one of the really good things about Twinmotion is you can put people in your scene, and they're a lot more lively than other programs I've noticed. So if you go to characters, you've got humans, groups, cutouts, and animals. I'm just going to focus on humans because these are just people for our scene. And you can see we have quite a lot of people to pick from. Let's just place one person. Let's just pick Johan. Johan with clothes on, unlike the guy below him, who would be a little bit awkward to place in our scene. Okay. So let's place Johan here and just see what Johan can do. So obviously Johan can have a drink straight away. But on top of that, we can change the colors of his clothes in order to have a little bit more variety in how our RPCs look. Beyond that, I can rotate him, I can move him, I think I can scale him as well, somehow. And then you can also pose him, so we can make him speak, and we can pick a few different animations of him speaking. There's a lot of other ones, so idle, he can be doing lots of things. He can be sitting on his phone if he's in, say, like an office or a train station. He can sit, so he can, read the paper, or I think he can be on his phone. He can lie down. He can dance. So he can do Gangnam Style apparently. So that's pretty cool. So if you had a nightclub, I guess there's a lot of options there. You've got special options such as swimming or playing the piano or video games, or if you need people in a wheelchair for a hospital, all of the RPCs can sit in a wheelchair, which is great. So it's good to know that they're disabled friendly. And he can work as well. So if he's on a construction site, he can shovel, he can survey, he can hammer things, he can drill. So immediately just like, wow, that they can do so much. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's even more they can do. Worth noting, you can also get groups of people as well. So there's a few predefined groups in here. So there's a couple of people, there's a bunch of people, there's a even bigger bunch of people, and I think all the people in these groups are still individual people. So if you want to focus on one, you've still got the option to go and muck around with each individual RPC, or you can swap them out for other RPCs as well. But at the end of the day, they're still clustered together as a group to manage. So really cool. And obviously you can build your own custom groups just by dragging them into a subfolder or a sub-object like we did before with that table. So pretty exciting, right? On top of that, you've got vehicles as well. So we can go and place a car in our garage, which is under here in my design. I had a bit of creativity back at university, and obviously didn't have a budget either. I might just quickly put a driveway texture on as well, because there's no, whoops, almost replaced all the concrete in my scene. Really important to be super careful with what you swap out. There we go, it looks a bit better. Look how quick that was, like just flick of the hand and it's updated. So we'll just chuck some vehicles in here. So we'll get a car, and we'll go place our car in here, and we'll just rotate our car so that it's ready to leave. And everything comes in at a logical scale. You've obviously got lots of colors available for your car. Let's say we want a red car, and we can put like a bike in here as well, like a cycle bike. Get someone here's a bike rider. Boo. So yeah, there's aircraft as well. There's a lot of things you can put in your scene, which is pretty cool, like hot air balloons for people that want to get a bit more artistic in their renders. And then a lot of miscellaneous things too. So a lot of construction vehicles, if you're doing a construction animation, totally feasible. And obviously a crane is, a pretty big crane to scale. So pretty exciting. Boats for, aquatic scenes, buses for public scenes. So wow, like again, just a lot of content to work with. So that's great to know as well. As well as that, we're just going to look at how to path NPCs. So you can actually animate NPCs along paths. So let's say we want to make a car go down this road. So under our urban settings, we'll make a path. And you see we've got two types of paths. We have a character path and a vehicle path. Let's make a character path first. So if I just click on this and I go here to create a character path, I can start clicking. And every time I click, it's basically building a pathway for people to follow. And I'll just finish it up over here. And then you right click to finish. And we have a character path. And look at that. People are walking along the path. You can change how many people, what they're wearing, what ethnicity they belong to, how wide the path can be, and also the density. So if it's a really busy pathway, you can increase the density. And look at that. Look at all those people. And it's so quick. I'm still in awe at how fast this is to set up, but also how fast this is to display to you what the model looks like. It doesn't really slow down. You can also reverse, and if you want to have a really creepy looking scene, you can just stop them and they stop walking. Let's just keep that path there for now and keep working. So we're going to make a vehicle path now. So again, we'll just make a vehicle path up here, and let's just make them start down here, and we'll get them to go around this corner and down the street in a few clicks. There we go. So vehicle paths are very interesting, how many settings there are. Obviously this road is probably too busy already, but what you can do is add lanes to your vehicle path. So we can have 2 lanes, but then let's have 2 directions as well. So now there's 2 lanes going in either direction. You can offset the lanes from each other, pull them apart. You can increase your density to make a really busy scene. And the cars sort of figure their way around each other. It's obviously not perfect, depending on what's in your scene. You can change the speed of the vehicles as well, so pretty cool. And you can change the traffic rule to right hand or left hand, depending which side of the road you drive on. And you can reverse the direction of the traffic as well. So really cool, right? I couldn't believe just how easy this was to use. I'll turn off 2 lanes and I'll just make it a pretty slow density, like 6%, and I'll just make them go just a little bit slower. They're going a bit too fast. Okay, so that's how to path people. So obviously you can set these up, and then I just keep working, and these paths stay as a part of the scene, which is really cool. So I think beyond that, we'll just look at grass, because I've had a couple of people ask me how to do grass that I've showed this to. If you go to vegetation and you activate your vegetation pane, and then go to vegetation and landscape, grass and flowers, you can basically just click and drag a grass of your choice. Let's just take tall grass 4, drop it in here, click on it, and you essentially get to place a diameter of grass. So let's just say we want 6 meters of grass here, and just click, and that's it. You've just got grass there essentially straight away. And the grass is good quality as well. It looks like real grass. I don't really like this particular grass, so I might just go and find it. I think it's in here somewhere. Maybe not. There we go. I'll just undo until it's gone, and instead maybe let's just go to like a long grass. Cool. So I'll just do that again. It's important to get like the placement roughly right so it doesn't sit over the edge of anything. There you go. And you can see this is like a good quality grass, decent amount of detail, and note that it's moving in the wind as well. So it's really good quality actually. And obviously you can go and you can add grass anywhere you want. I can go and chuck it in front of here. Might want it to be maybe like 3 meters, and essentially you can just click and drag, and it's sort of like painting the ground essentially. So you can see I've just painted that grass onto that surface there. It can be a little bit hard to get it exactly right, but that's one way to do it. And if you want little flowers and things to put in there, you can just go to vegetation and landscape, grass and flowers, and I believe there should be some individual flowers you can place on their own. There you go, and now you can see we have some flowers in there. So obviously, really quick and easy to set up, and it's really not slowing down the scene either, which is really exciting. Probably an additional thing I'll add is just lights. So what I'm going to do is just change my time of day. I'm going to go a little bit later at night, maybe I'll just go to 6 o'clock. So let's add some light to our scene. So let's add some street lights first, and then we'll add some actual lights. So I'm just going to go to Furniture, City, Street Lights, and these elements by default should have lights nested within them. So I'll just add some, I'll add some rhino lights. And note that they're already adding light to my scene. So I'll just add 1, 2, 3, and maybe a 4th one down here. Okay, so that's one type of light we can add to our scene. So I'll just make it a little bit later at night and let the scene adjust. Notice all the car's headlights go on as well, so wow. Didn't even have to tell it to do it, it just knew what to do. On top of that, we've also got lights available, I believe, under here in our library. And these are actually just like omni lights or spotlights. So essentially they act like IES profiles on whatever surface they're placed on. So let's say I want a downlight under this soffit here. I can just go and place one here and here. And so now we get two directional omni lights, and you can change the intensity of them as well if they're too bright. So that's really cool. You need to build like actual families if you want them to have the light fixture itself. So keep that in mind, and you can turn them on and off really easily. Sometimes you can use omni lights just to sort of light up a space. So once you've placed it, just elevate it a little bit, just so it doesn't sort of blow out the scene. And then from the outside, it sort of looks like there's lights on inside your design. Another good trick for light that I use sometimes instead is I'll replace my windows with a special material. So if I go to materials down to neon, and I pick neon 1, and instead of apply to object, I replace material, and I replace all my glass with this neon material. Now you can replace anything really. And I'll just take the glow down to 1%. Essentially, it makes the lights look like they're on without highlighting anything inside the building itself. So I can make this a glow of 1, and there you go. You can see immediately we sort of have the illusion that our lights are turned on. So pretty cool, right? So that's sort of how you can do lighting. From now, we'll go to some environment settings now. So I've already shown you how to change the time of day under here, And obviously everything adjusts as the time changes. So when it's nighttime, all the lights turn on and the street lights will turn on. You can notice it takes a little while to adjust, but eventually the lighting balances out to suit the time of day. Okay, so if we just jump under here first, you'll see I can change my context. So if I just get a little bit higher than my model, note my horizon is a city at the moment. So I can change this to something else if I want to. I can make them all sorts of different contexts. Usually I use city, but it just depends on your project. And if you don't like the part of the city you can see, you can just rotate your horizon and it rotates around your scene. So you can get the best part of the horizon in your shot. They also update as the time changes too. So if I go to nighttime, you'll note that the buildings go on and we get the moon. So pretty cool. And immediately we see that. Note this whole time my vehicles are still moving and my performance hasn't dropped at all. So pretty incredible. Let's also check out weather. So weather can make a shot very believable or very atmospheric if you do it right. So let's say we want to make this windy and a little bit rainy as well. So I'm just going to go to my nature tab. The first thing I'll show you is just localization. So you can tell the program where your building is located and it might update the settings just a little bit to suit. So I'll just say I'm in Sydney, in Australia. And we'll go Sydney, New South Wales, Australia, and you'll see that it's picked up some changes in the night sky. So we can see there's some slightly different horizon settings because we're in the southern hemisphere now. As well as that, I can change the month of the year. And we get some slight changes to the ambient light. I can also change my north offset, so I can say that north is actually at 30 degrees. For now, I'll just say north is up the space, but this is a good way to set your project north if you need to. As well as this, I'll just go into lighting settings. You can change the intensity of the sun. You can add ambient light to your shot if it's too dark. I'll just leave it at 1. And you can change the white balance, global illumination, so how much does light bounce off things. And you can change what they call the moon power, so how bright is your moon. For now I'll just say 1. How refined are your shadows? So the lower it is, the more refined your shadows will be. And you can turn on ambient occlusion as well. So you can add that to sort of add some dirt map and depth to your objects around their edges. We'll just put in a little bit of ambient occlusion on. There's more settings as well, obviously, but I won't go into them. Have a look at them yourself. As well as that, you can add an ocean to your shot, which is quite interesting. So I can just turn on the ocean, raise the water, currently underwater. But if I find the right height, you'll see now we can just place an ocean throughout our scene. So this could be like a riverbed level or something like that. And you can change the type of water as well to different types of water profiles. So pretty cool, right? I mean, the feature totally didn't even have to be there, and there it is. Very cool. As well as that, what we can do now is change the weather. So this is pretty exciting. I really like this feature. So let's say we want it to be raining. So we can cycle through the quality of our weather. So it's more overcast now. And then as we get closer to here, more clouds, and it starts to rain. And it's very overcast. And then we can go back, and it's back to a sunny or a clear night. So we'll just turn on some clouds and some rain. And as well as that, we'll also add some wind. So you can add some wind to your shot. It's a bit hard to notice it, but the tree starts moving a lot more. And we can make it snow as well. It can become winter. And back to where we were. So we're going to make this a windy shot. And you won't really notice the wind right now. But see, there's a little bit of motion and there's some leaves falling off the tree. If we go to effects, we can really push that up and add a lot of wind speed. And you really start to notice the wind's effect now. So let's just put our wind speed at about 3, which is still quite strong. What really helps a shot get a bit more atmospheric is to add some fog or some smog to it. So we're just going to bump this up a little bit. And there you go, that's definitely like a lot more atmospheric. And I might just go and change my lighting settings a little bit because it's just a little bit too bright. There we go, that looks about right. I'll just check my time of night. There we go. Cool. So eventually the light should balance back out. But essentially that's our environment settings covered. So pretty cool, right? I'm very impressed by just how intuitive this is to set up. And that's pretty much our scene. So let's say we want to walk through our scene now. If you come up here and you click on this little eye icon, you can either take a screenshot, which will just generate the screenshot for what you see right then and there, or conversely, you can activate this mode here. So BIM motion is what they call it. It's essentially sort of like Enscape or Lumion, where you walk around the shot or you fly around the shot. And there we go, pretty cool, right? And we're still in medium quality, so I will put it to very high in a second just to show you how much better it looks. What you can do is you can change the weather, or you can change the time, the weather effects, or also just the time. So I can really quickly adjust my slider to change my settings. Let's just go during the day first. And what we can do is just increase the quality of our shot from medium to very high. It will get slower, but it will look infinitely better straight away. So you see we've got water effects on the grounds now. Our people look much more convincing, and our materials have got much better in quality, but notice it's very choppy. I'm not on the strongest computer right now. You will need a good graphics card to run this in fast speed. Notice my material texture immediately looks a lot better as well. When I go to nighttime, it should look even better, because a good way to sort of hide detail in a render is to make it nighttime sometimes, because you see less at night. So we'll go to 8 o'clock, and there you go. How good does that look for just a really quick little scene that I set up? I mean, I wouldn't have spent more than about 20 minutes setting this up and done. It's animated, it looks great. Obviously, if you want to animate this shot as well, you can use capture. So you can either take images, you can generate a panorama, you can generate a video by creating frames and editing the video. And you can also do a VR experience as well under here. If you have a VR headset activated, you can basically feed it in through there to have a VR experience. So pretty exciting. And then you can basically just export your videos or your BIM motion and export it out as its relevant file format. So really cool, right? I thought that was a really interesting software. There's more features. Highly recommend you look up their website. They have a lot of great YouTube tutorials for detailed ways to go through things. But try it out, download it, try it before it might not be free anymore, and see what you think. It might be a great alternative to a visualization tool you might be using currently, because it's really easy and friendly to use. So hopefully you found that interesting. I really did. So thanks for watching today, and remember, you've got till November, so download it, try it out. Even if you don't try it out, just download it so you've got it. And in future, I'll be looking at some other programs that do similar things. One is Enscape, and the other is Zuva. So the guys at Zuva actually got in touch with me and asked if I could do a covering video of their topic and potentially affiliate with them in future. So definitely happy to cover their videos, cover their software in a video. So keep an eye out for these in the future. So thanks for watching today. If you've got any feedback or comments, feel free to leave it down below. And for those that lasted through the video, thank you. I know it's probably a long video today, but I had a lot to share and I was quite excited too. So if you're not already following and subscribing, feel free to do so. I make videos 2 to 3 times a week and plan to do so for a long time. So thanks for watching today, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks. Take care.